Good evening, everyone. Welcome in. For those who were not expecting a service, we will not be having a service this evening, but I wanted to open not just our session tonight, our class tonight, which is the first of our three-part Elul series. So we're going to open not just this class specifically, but open this 3-week series over the month leading into Rosh Hashanah. So we're very grateful all of you are here, and I hope you'll come back next week for Rabbi Micah's discussion, and then the week after that for Rabbi Leah Sternberg's discussion. And so I wanted to begin today with a nigun, a wordless melody. I'll sing it a couple times, and I want to invite everyone. Before we get going, I'm going to shut this door. We'll leave that one open. And I want to invite everyone to place both of your feet on the floor. Take a nice deep breath in and out. One more time, deep breath in and out. Over the course of this evening, we're going to have a few moments to take a break and breathe. It's very relevant to what we're talking about. So we're going to begin with this wordless melody. Let's try that. Oh, great. Try Let's put that together. One more time. I can hear you singing. Now, it is not often that I begin a class like this singing, but I think especially for the theme today, it was very fitting. And I was reminded of this teaching from a 20th century, I should say he was born in 1895, Hasidic rabbi, who taught the meaning of a nigun is awakening, to awaken a sublime concept of triumph for being laid low, and to awaken the essence of humanity and its deep significance that cannot be revealed save by other means. When we sing, whether with words or without, and whether we're conscious of it or not, we're actually opening up different parts of ourselves. That part that's not the thinking and the doing and the analyzing, but that part that is the feeling. And I hope you've noticed actually the room feels a little bit different now that we've sung together. And just want to make a note that the nigun we just sang together was written by Memphis's very own Eliana Light from her album Orahi. It's called the Walk Home Nigun. And I think it's very fitting that it's called the Walk Home Nigun because in so many ways, the path through the month of Elul is indeed a walk home. Now, for many people, the high holy days are indeed literally a time to go home, to be with family, to be with friends, to be in places that are our spiritual homes. But also, I think it represents what we seek to do within our souls. We seek to go home. And what does home mean? And what does that home look like? And that's where I want to begin this evening. The chorus of the month of Elul is Psalm 27. Throughout the month of Elul in synagogues around the country, you will likely hear words that come to us from Psalm 27, whether it be on Friday nights or in other services as well. Certainly at our Slichot service in just a couple of weeks or a week and a half or so, we will be highlighting this psalm. And it has a special relationship with the month of Elul for a variety of reasons. And so I wanted to begin by taking a look at Psalm 27 and beginning to open up a conversation about what it is about this psalm that makes it so relevant to this on-ramp into the holiest time of the year. And so could I get a volunteer to read the first verse of the psalm for us? Go for it, Judy.
All right. The Eternal is my light and my help. Whom should I fear? God is the stronghold of my life. Whom should I dread?
Thank you very much. And that word stronghold in Hebrew is ma'oz, which may remind us of perhaps another holiday, perhaps a song, Ma'oz Tzur. And I think whenever you open up the book of Psalms, the first verse of each psalm, and once you get through kind of a Psalm of David for the conductor, once you get through that part, it actually sets the tone for what this psalm is about. So I could explain what this psalm is about, but I'm curious what everyone is thinking or feeling just reading that first verse of the psalm. That's all right. Could I get a volunteer to read the last verse of the psalm, verse 14? Yes.
Look to the Eternal. Be strong and of good courage. Oh, look to the Eternal.
Very good. Thank you. So these two verses bracket Psalm 27. And I think it's important to note that because in both of those verses, you have this language surrounding protection, security, a feeling of being safe. And if you read through the rest of the psalm, you can see that this is one of the psalms that, according to tradition, David wrote amongst his various military conflicts when he was deeply afraid. Another psalm within this category would be probably a more familiar psalm, that of Psalm 23, which begins with those words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And I think that during the month of Elul, and specifically in this moment of time, as we approach the end of 5785, we are still in the midst of the secular year of 2025, and what's really guiding our class offerings the next few weeks is an acknowledgement of the need for a feeling of safety, a feeling of stability in our world. I think I'm not the only one in feeling that each day, each step, it feels like we're walking in shifting ground. What we once thought were true and fundamental ideas, core values, and precepts, whether it's here in the United States, whether it's on the global scale, but I will leave it to my wonderful colleagues to explore that, or even for us as individuals, because it is all interrelated, our internal worlds and what's happening around us. And so what we're going to explore today is a few different approaches to finding that stronghold, that ma'oz, that actually resides within each one of us. A ma'oz, a stronghold, can indeed be a physical place, a physical sense of safety, but I think it also can be an internal, personal place. Some people might say your happy place, or the place that you go to when things get really, really hard. And what we learn, not just in Judaism, but Judaism informed by modern experience, is that that internal place indeed is a given. It is a part of our divine image, our Tselem Elohim, but it also needs to be cultivated. We need to cultivate and grow and expand and strengthen that stronghold within us. And so with the first and last verses of Psalm 27 in our mind, I wanted to highlight probably the most famous verse from Psalm 27 that you would likely hear more often than any other verse. Achad she'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. One thing I ask of the Eternal, only that do I seek, to dwell in the house of the Eternal all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Eternal, and to frequent, or I guess if you wanted to be fancy, to frequent God's divine abode. So just on the surface, does anyone have any thoughts or feelings about what this verse is describing? What is the poet talking about? Yeah, Sarah.
It's talking about trying to feel close to God throughout life, right? And a godly community.
Yeah, feeling close to God throughout all of our lives. And it's all informed in the traditional Jewish understanding of what this month is, which is that the month Elul is actually an acronym for the Hebrew words ani, ledodi, vidodi, li, which is, yeah, Beauty?
I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine.
I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. I'm just repeating for the sake of our recording here in case they can't hear you. It is a verse we hear a lot, of course, on weddings. And it's a verse that talks about the intimacy between God and God's creations. Now, why the connection with Elul beyond the acronym? The idea is that before God is sitting on a throne and presiding over the divine court, which is really the scene that we are playing out on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that's where you get the majesty. That's where you get the big and brightness and the awe, both awe in terms of, wow, that's amazing, but also a little bit of fear. The idea is that before God has to do God's magisterial duties, God goes out into the field and God is much nearer to us rather than the enthroned God that we have on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. How did I end up there? So God's divine abode. Now, on the surface, we might think that is literally talking about a physical place. Certainly within this context, we would assume that it is talking about the temple in Jerusalem. After all, that is the physical location where God did reside for our ancient ancestors. But as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to explore what it would look like to think of the divine abode as actually also being something that resides within us, our own inner sanctuary. And related to that is this notion of resilience, because if we are able to cultivate and strengthen that internal abode, that internal sanctuary, it makes things even just a little bit easier. So, before I continue, any thoughts or questions?
Sometimes that that place you want to go to could be the park, or it could be just a walk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as we're talking about the relationship between the external world and our internal world, there are certainly places out there that it better enable us to find that sense of peace within ourselves. Walking in a park, going and hearing the waves by the ocean if you have the opportunity to do that. Whatever it might be, and we're actually going to get into that a little bit later. But before we do that, I wanted to bring a little bit of modern psychology into this. And before I continue, I want to give credit to Rabbi Dr. James Jacobson Maisels. He is a wonderful scholar, teacher, and the founder of a Jewish mindfulness center called Or Halev. And much of what I'm bringing tonight was inspired by a class I took with him last summer. And so I want to be sure to give credit, B'Shem Omro, in Hebrew, in the name of the one who said it. And it was he who introduced me to this concept, which is a pretty well-known. I included this quote from the National Institute for the Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine that talks about this concept of the window of tolerance. Is anyone familiar with this expression, the window of tolerance? Amy? Lane, Ada? Yes. I think a lot of people that maybe work in mental health professions, and I am not a mental health professional. I would leave it to y'all to correct me if I'm presenting this wrong. But could someone please read this first paragraph for us?
Clients are best able to cope with stressors and triggers when they can manage the resulting emotions. So how can we help clients who struggle to manage the anxiety, anger, and pain brought on by everyday stressors?
Someone else like to continue?
The window of tolerance is a concept originally developed by Dr. Dan Siegel, MD, to describe the optimal zone of arousal for a person to function in everyday life. When a person is operating within this zone or window, they can effectively manage and cope with their emotions.
Third time's a charm. Someone like to read this last paragraph?
For clients who have experienced trauma, it is often difficult to regulate emotions, and the zone of arousal where they can function effectively becomes quite narrow.
Thank you. So on the one hand, you have hyperarousal, which is those really big demonstrative emotions. You're feeling angry, you're feeling out of control, overwhelmed. It's triggering your sympathetic nervous system, which is where you get your fight, flight, or freeze reaction. Some people actually add friend as another reaction. And so that's hyperarousal. Then you have hypoarousal. That's kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, where you have a tendency to retreat into yourself, feeling zoned out.
Freeze goes there.
Freeze goes into hypoarousal. I see. So fight or flight is hyper. Hypo is the freeze.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. And the hypoarousal is that feeling of shutting down. And in between there is the window of tolerance. And it's in that space where we can, you might say, really be our best selves, where we can respond to situations with poise, with calm, and it is actually within that window of tolerance for those who are on journeys of therapy. That's where the best work can be done. That's where we can truly move forward. And I think it's safe to say life as it is creates situations that trigger these different responses. And certainly life now, when we are constantly surrounded by various screens and alerts telling us every single thing that is going on in the world, it is affecting our nervous systems. And so the question is, how do we reach a place of the window of tolerance? And so continuing on, we're going to take a look at a couple of different Jewish approaches to how we can find that window of tolerance, which in my mind is that divine abode within, that place of feeling, that reservoir that provides us with the strength to be able to go back out into the world, to get off the map, whichever idiom you want to use, that inner sense of resilience. And so the following, those of you with the sheets in front of you, you'll see it is quite a bit of text. It all comes from a teaching of Kalonymus Kalman Shapira, who was the Grand Rabbi of Piaseczno in Poland. Please forgive my pronunciation. He is probably best known for being the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto between the years of 1939 and 1942. And after his death in 1943, many of his students came together and they wrote down a lot of his teachings. And a lot of his teachings actually speak directly to what we're talking about. So on page 3 in your packet, I'll go ahead and read this first paragraph. In the Babylonian Talmud, we have this teaching, a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. There's this connection between prophecy and when we dream. And so Rabbi Shapira says, he continues with his well-known thesis that the ego constitutes a barrier to the heavenly influx. Thus, if one's thoughts and intellects are awake, it is difficult for the heavenly flow to penetrate. However, when one sleeps, their knowing mind and thoughts are quiet. And precisely because at such times they have no self-directed consciousness, it is possible for the heavenly influence to rest upon them. I'm going to pause. Any questions? It's a little bit of complicated language.
It's kind of Jungian.
Jungian? Could you say a little bit more?
Well, that's what dream state is in his world, so.
Right. I'm not super familiar with Jungian, but there's this element of kind of a release for our subconscious when we're dreaming. Definitely. And so, and it is likely that he might have been influenced by many of those thinkers. I think we often like to think, especially with Hasidic rabbis, that the only knowledge that they know is Torah and Jewish texts, but they were very literate in a variety of disciplines. And so he continues, this is the meaning of a dream is 1/60th of prophecy. It is also well known from the teachings of our master that we are more spiritually aroused to a greater extent in prayer than in Torah study. For when we learn Torah, and I would actually substitute when we learn and perhaps even when we work in our jobs, we tend to utilize our sense of self. I learn, I think that. But in prayer, it is just the opposite. The essence is the self-annihilation in it. Now, when a person sleeps, it is impossible for them to desire anything for themselves since they are asleep. And here's the real kicker. Thus, the essence is to come to a sleep consciousness while we are awake, while it is possible to desire. That is to say, we wish to quiet a person's unceasing flow of thoughts and desires, for it is the way of thoughts to become entangled, one in the next, and so it is difficult for a person to separate themselves from them. Does this feel true to people? Yeah, I heard a lot of giggling while we were reading. It's very real. So often we get carried away by our thoughts, our worries, our anxieties, that we almost feel that we're not in control of them. In fact, they are in control of us. A therapist that I worked with when I was living in Los Angeles liked to use the metaphor of driving the bus. Who's driving the bus in our particular moments? Is it that voice who's the anxious voice, who's worrying? Is that the one driving the bus and really driving and really guiding our actions? Is it perhaps the angry or critical part of ourselves? And the key with a lot of work and a lot of time is that it's really our core self, that inner some say inner witness, inner light, that's the one that should be the one to drive the bus. And the key idea is not to get rid of those other parts, but actually acknowledge them and then build up the confidence of that inner light within us. So how do we do all this? How do we quiet our thoughts? And Rabbi Shapira actually kind of it talks about him guiding his students through what we would describe as either mindfulness or meditation. So could someone pick up the little italicized subtitles are my own, just to help divide it up for us. Could someone continue with the words, a person should watch?
A person should watch their thoughts for a short while. They will slowly feel that the mind is emptying. The thoughts are slowing a bit from their habitual flow. Then they should begin to say a verse such as, the Lord God is true, Jeremiah 10:10, in order to now bind the mind, which is empty of other thoughts, to a single thought of holiness. Afterwards, one can request what they require in whatever aspect of character development they need to perfect, whether it's strengthening of faith, love, or awe.
And I think we could add a few others. So what are the, curious, any thoughts or comments? Yeah.
Sounds like what you're supposed to do during yoga.
What you're supposed to do during yoga.
Follow your breath,
Mhm.
and then when the thought comes, you're supposed to, like, okay, a thought comes, acknowledge it and let it go, or mindfulness.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing, but it's not, and it's not easy to do.
It is not easy to do. That's why it's called a practice. You gotta practice at it, absolutely.
You know, I think there's a mantra here. So here there is a particular verse, but it's a mantra, and it's just something to focus the attention then, so that other things melt away.
Mhm.
And you're not caught, your brain isn't caught in the busyness of mental chatter and anxiety.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I had a moment this morning. I was listening as I was commuting to something that was also talking about Jewish meditation from a different angle. And they had the same concept. They did not say this, but what came into my mind is it's sort of like a Shema state of being,
Say more.
oneness.
Oneness.
That is
Definitely.
holy. And that is us.
Absolutely. So before we're actually, I want to invite everyone in just a moment. We're actually going to turn this part of our brain off. We're going to give this a shot. Elaine, before we do that, since maybe you read ahead, if you could continue with the example that is given in these writings.
Is it the same thing? Well, see, this was gifted this morning. No, the teacher said these holy words. I believe with complete faith that God is the only existence in the world, that there is no reality but God in the world. All that is in the world is only the radiance of God. One repeats this.
So let's pause there. Pretty on theme, I would say, with what you were thinking about. This idea of oneness, we are all a part of oneness. Certainly a common theme in a lot of different meditation techniques. So before we keep going with these wonderful analytical brains that we have in the room, I want to invite everyone to take your paper down. Close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath in through your diaphragm. Expand your belly, and then release. One more time, nice deep belly breath. Think about the capacity for how much you can hold within you, and then how much you can release as we exhale. Feel your feet on the ground. Imagine as if your feet and your toes are sprouting out little roots and drawing a sense of security and groundedness directly from the earth beneath us. Feel your body supported on the chair. the stability, sense of safety, that with all that's going on, that there is enough here to support you. As you continue to breathe in and out, I want to invite you to complete the statement in your mind, I am. You can choose whatever word. I just would invite it to be a positive word. I am worthy. I am light. I am loved. I am holy. Whatever it may be. And take a few breaths, 4 to 5 breaths, just thinking about that phrase. As those thoughts come in your head, I want to invite you to acknowledge them and simply let them go by. They're just thoughts. They're not you. I'm going to take a few more breaths. Feel the oxygen infusing every part of your body. Noticing the sensation, your feet on the ground, your body supported in a chair. Take one final breath in and out. When you're ready, I want to invite you to reopen your eyes. Rabbi Shapira continues, one repeats this phrase. In this case, we used the phrase, I am. And those of you who want to continue your meditation, please feel free to do so. One repeats this several times, but not forcefully. The whole point here is to quiet one's thoughts. Speaking with great forcefulness is liable to arouse the self. Rather, on the contrary, one utters the phrase with great gentleness. I love that phrase, with great gentleness. What would it be like to be gentle with ourselves? What would that be like, to truly be gentle with ourselves, rather than pushing ourselves to go and do more and do enough and be enough? There would be Shabbat. There would be Shabbat. I love that. Forgiving. Very much, of course, one of the great themes of this season. And if we believe in El Malei Rachamim, and a God full of forgiveness and compassion, and we also believe that we are indeed made in God's image, that means that infinite sense of forgiveness is not somewhere way out there that we have to go and find it. It's always in ourselves. It's just about being able to remove the barriers to be able to get in touch with that. At the top of page 4, Rabbi Shapira continues saying it is possible to use quieting to correct any harmful trait. So we're moving from mindfulness into what is usually described as musar, the process of self-improvement in Jewish thought. And I thought this was really interesting, and I would love to open it up for discussion, particularly for our mental health professionals here, that it is possible through this technique of quieting to correct any harmful trait, but not in a negative way, rather only in a positive way, by cultivating the opposite of a bad trait. For example, if someone is plagued with the quality of laziness, they will not speak about moving away from laziness, but rather will speak about acquiring enthusiasm. When I read this felt very true to me. Oftentimes when there are certain parts of myself that are not up to what I would like them to be, I tend to, you could say push myself. I think sometimes we might even say punish yourself of you need to be this, you need to be this, you need to stop doing this, you need to stop doing this. And I think this offers a really powerful shift in perspective of focusing on positive attributes and cultivating those attributes that will eventually win out against the negative ones. It's not about fighting against ourselves. It's actually about loving those parts of ourselves that feel that they need to be heard and seen. Any thoughts or reflections?
Yeah, yes. There's a verse, be still and know that I'm God. And for the longest time, I tried to do that. The more my mind was racing, and it wasn't working.
It is hard
When I
to be
started
still.
Thinking about what you said, about loving and something or finding something positive, the more I look for something positive in someone, the more there was to find positive.
Yeah. The more we can acknowledge the positive, the more of the positive we see. And that's a great segue to what we're gonna get to in just a
The
moment.
same thing with ourselves.
Absolutely.
If I'm not gonna be lazy, I'm gonna sit there and think about it. and not gonna do
Absolutely.
anything.
Or if we're spending all of our time pointing out the things we don't like about ourselves.
Yeah, and if you think about that, whatever you're thinking about, I'm talking to you, whatever you're thinking about grows. And so think about something that you want,
Absolutely.
and that will grow.
Absolutely. Yeah, Sarah.
I have I can think of many places where quieting works. When I think about it personally, like sometimes you're in a hurry and you're rushing or you're going fast for a purpose, like if you're running or you're swimming or something. But oftentimes if you're like, or at least me, I should say me, if I'm rushing around out of stress or frustration or anger or something, I'm much more likely to like trip or slam into a wall or eat so much that I feel sick or things like that. But, and so like all of these other things come with pushing myself too hard or pushing myself too fast. That wouldn't have come if I'd been quieter. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just noticed something that I'm thinking of. When you put the Psalms up, the progression in the Psalms seemed to go from fear to courage and hope to godliness. And the progression of this process that you're describing here is also going from the negative to the positive, to hopefulness to godliness, which is always a positive. So it seems to be a parallel structure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a powerful point, and what a different thing it is to act out of, I always think about love and fear. What a powerful thing it is to act out of love. I'll use the example of exercise. When you exercise, is it out of fear of what your body might look like or fear of how people will perceive you? And I think that is often, you're losing the battle before it even started. Or are you exercising out of a love for your body and an understanding that you are taking care of yourself, but you're not that you're punishing yourself for being bad per se. I think the flaw and I am as guilty of this as anyone else. Let's say you have a really lovely dessert one evening, and then the next day it's like, oh, now I need to go on like a 5-mile run to work it off, so to speak. And one of the things I've learned is that obviously it's a benign comment, but where it's coming from is more from a place of fear and more from a negative place than from a place of self-love. Absolutely. Any other
Well, then
thoughts?
you should probably say, I love myself, and because I do, I'm going to have that dessert,
Mm-hmm.
and I will not worry about what the repercussions are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amen.
Hearing some amens. Find joy. Absolutely. So that's actually a really good segue into kind of the next approach I wanted to bring, which is an orientation towards pleasure and the pleasant. And could I get a volunteer to read? There's this small little snippet from the Talmud that I think perfectly encapsulates what this is about.
Three things.
Go
Go.
ahead.
No, you go.
3 things settle a person's mind: sound, sight, and scent. 3 things expand a person's mind: a pleasurable living space, pleasant people, and pleasant objects.
Okay, let's just stay here for a moment. So 3 things settle a person's mind: sound, sight, and scent. I'm thinking about Judy talking about that divine place being a park, being a pond, being, I don't know, I'm having trouble coming up with what are some of the other places that just by being there, hearing the sounds and smelling the smells just gives us the moment to calm down, for our nervous system to calm down.
Our library.
Library.
Our home.
Our home.
Hopefully.
Absolutely, our home. And this is something you might have heard before. Our home in Jewish tradition is understood to be a mikdash ma'at, a small sanctuary. And if it's not, then that's an opportunity to do what, for example, the ancient tradition of Yom Kippur is, which is to clean it out, to clean out that bad energy and reset it as a safe place, a place where we can really find that window of tolerance and in doing so, better be able to confront the challenges that we all face in our day-to-day lives. So we have home, library, any other?
Wherever the coffee is being brewed.
Coffee, the smell of coffee, absolutely.
Out in your forest.
Out in the forest here.
I was driving in, and I almost lost my concentration on driving and parking. Because there was the most beautiful deer. In fact, there was several of them.
So over
And they were out there.
our Temple Israel deer, absolutely. And I want to invite all of you, if you haven't enjoyed the walking path here, it is newly paved. There's no gravel on it. It's nice and smooth, very good on your feet. So I want to invite you as the weather, I think, is cooling down a little bit, maybe. But absolutely. So other sounds, sights, scents, yeah.
I'm from the Caribbean, so the ocean.
The ocean, oh yeah. Absolutely, the rhythmic sound of the waves crashing in, being able to float and float adrift.
It always reminds me, that person from Africa says that the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the eternal. So it's like,
Absolutely. All of these things are always out there for us. These are unlimited resources. And they are, I remember one of my teachers in rabbinical school saying that taking a walk is medicine. Going out and being in the trees is medicine. All of these things are medicine. Yes, many of us need medications for various things, but I think especially, it's interesting how a lot of this conversation is circling around nature, especially for the way that we live now, where we're not as much a part of nature. It's all the more important to make that time for ourselves. Absolutely. And then 3 things expand a person's mind: a pleasurable living space, pleasant people, and pleasant objects. And one of the things that's so important about this orientation towards pleasantness is exactly what Marilyn was talking about, where if we're able to see the beauty in things, we're able to feel gratitude. We may not think about it at the time, but that builds up that reserve within us, so that when things are unpleasant, it's not always, let me go back to this place, although that's a very helpful technique for sure. But it's even the the part of us that is meeting whatever challenge we are confronting in our lives is actually much more strengthened and able to deal with conflict, to deal with anxiety, to deal with all of these things that in our various lives we encounter. It's just part of what it is to be human. And I'm just looking at my notes, and one of the things we talked about that I wanted to channel here is noticing the beneficence of the world. What I take that to mean is understanding that as hard as things seem, as dire as things seem, we still live in a world where there's enough food for everyone. With all of our weight, our baggage, those heavy things that we carry with us, the earth still supports us. And even with all of the things going on in the world, the sunrise is still beautiful. Each spring here at Temple, we get I would say, loud and sometimes abrasive calls of baby hawks as they are growing into fledglings. Some of you who've been here have likely heard it. And it's those just taking a moment to notice those kinds of things can do a lot for us. So I wanted to hone in a little bit on smells, and then we're going to talk about another technique as we are actually moving towards the end of our time together. Could I get a volunteer to read Rabbi Huda's teaching?
I'll read it again. Rabbi Huda said, one who goes out during Nisan and sees trees that are blossoming recites, "Blessed, who has withheld nothing from God's world and has created in it beautiful creatures and trees for human beings to enjoy." Rav Zuka Bar Tovia said that Rav said, "From where is it derived that one recites a blessing over sin? As it is stated, let every soul praise the Eternal." Psalms 156. He explains the verse. What is it from which the soul derives benefit and the body does not derive benefit from it? You must say that is sent, even over items from which only the soul derives benefit. One must recite a blessing and praise God. Babylonian Talmud, Barak Code 43b.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Any thoughts on this one? I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorite Talmudic passages.
I don't understand it.
You don't understand it? Okay, well, let's walk through it.
Good smell or a bad smell here. Maybe that's-
So, welcome. We're gonna transport ourselves to a Beit Midrash, and we're gonna dissect this little daf of Talmud. So, one who goes out during Nisan. When is Nisan? Spring. Yes, it is when Passover is. And sees trees that are blossoming, recites, "Blessed is God who has withheld nothing from God's world and has created in it beautiful creatures and trees for human beings to enjoy." This is one of many. They're called the Birchot HaNe'emin, the blessings over pleasant experiences that we have. There's a blessing for seeing a rainbow. There's a blessing for meeting interesting people. There's all kinds of blessings about things, blessings of encounter, we might call them, that we can recite as an expression of gratitude for the wondrous world we get to witness and enjoy. Now, oftentimes, the blessings that we recite are, what are the blessings specifically thinking about the type of nourishment that we receive? What are the blessings that we typically recite? Motzi, our blessing for meals, our blessing for wine, those things that we consume and that we need for our physical nourishment. And so it's asking a question. Now, one of the things about the Talmud is oftentimes they are indeed rhetorical questions.
We also, at the beginning of the day, the Moda'ani,
Mhm.
lots of acknowledgments of
of things in the physical world for which we are grateful, and lots of things in the body for which we are grateful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I just gave a bunch of examples in terms of the rainbow and all those kinds of things, but a lot of those blessings are actually related to the physical realm, in the sense of we have a blessing. Now, we do have a blessing for our soul, but we also have a blessing for all of the elements of our body that work together in coordination that will enable us to live. And so the question is, okay, so we're saying a blessing over the pleasant scent of trees that are in bloom. And where does that idea come from? And this is, and I want to point out, and I did give a sermon a few months ago where I mentioned this, that verse, let every soul praise the eternal, Kol haneshama tehalel. You may have heard it in various circumstances here at Temple or elsewhere. That word neshama, that literally means soul, comes from the same root in Hebrew as linshom, which means to breathe. And so there's connection between the breath and, by extension, smell as part of inhaling and breath, that connects it to scent. That's part of what the textual thing that's going on here. And so the idea is that when we breathe something in, that part of ourselves, we breathe something pleasant in, that part of ourselves that is connected with our breath, i.e. our soul, actually is being nourished by it.
So does that mean when people light scent sticks or candles while they're just sitting there trying to meditate themselves, breathing in that aroma helps a lot?
Indeed. And if we, I think often people think of incense and yoga and a lot of meditative practices, they think of Eastern traditions. But I would like to remind you that in ancient days in the temple in Jerusalem, when they had the big altar where they would present the sacrifices, it wasn't just the sacrifices that were being burned on a constant, literally day in and day out. What else did they have there?
A pleasant odor.
Pleasant odor. They had myrrh and frankincense. They had incense. Now we don't have to go into like why they might have the needed pleasant smelling things. That's not for right now. But there is an element that our scent is closely related with our spiritual selves. And so next time you stop to smell the flowers, you're doing a great thing for yourself. And maybe you could say a little blessing.
As you said, this came from the Babylonian Talmud. Would that have anything to do with the great gardens of Babylonia?
The hanging garden,
The hanging gardens.
You know, that's an interesting question. I would have to take a look at a timeline
Okay.
in terms of, so the Babylonian Talmud, I'll give a little bit of background. Wendy, did you want to share something before?
Oh, well, I don't want to break the flow of this, but I'll just put this out there and maybe it relates. We have a weekly opportunity that I don't take advantage of enough, but that where scent is incorporated. Of course, it's the Havdalah, the practice of Havdalah, and what a wonderful weekly opportunity that is to awaken our senses. And I don't know, if you want to weave that into what we're talking about.
Absolutely. I'm going to put a pin in that because we're going to get to it because it directly relates to the next thing we're going to. It might be connected with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. I do think the Hanging Gardens were more ancient than when the Babylonian Talmud was put together. So when we say Babylonian Talmud, it's the version of the Talmud that was compiled in what is modern day Iraq by the Jews who had been exiled and lived there for hundreds of years. Generally speaking, people point to like between 600 and 800 or 900 CE for when it was all put together and compiled into an enormous anthology of text. So I think the timing might have been off, but certainly, but I like the idea. if I could travel back in time and see one of the wonders of the world, that would be one of them. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, absolutely. So, yes,
So I have
Audrey,
a question or perhaps a disagreement with something here in the
wonderful.
text. Because it says, what is it from which the soul derives benefit and the body does not derive benefit from it? You must say that it's scent. There actually are physical benefits to scent. So it's not that the body does not derive benefit or we have physical responses to scent that can be very health fulfilling or health denying.
Absolutely.
So I'm a little confused by it saying that scent does not has a benefit for the soul, but not for the body.
Right. It is absolutely a good point. And I'm not here to play apologetics for the Talmud, but I think in a pre-modern world, I think for them, they probably did not understand it. They did not have the same understanding of our bodies.
But I'm sure they recognized that there was emotional benefit to scent.
Yeah,
we've already talked
absolutely.
about how far back that goes in our rituals.
And certainly, I'm trying to think of an adjective for it, but the connection between scent and memory, I would imagine, is very, was still understood back in those
And
times.
that's, part of why we incorporate all these different sensate activities in our rituals is because they tie us nostalgically
Mm-hmm.
in this long chain of ritual over
Absolutely.
the millennia.
Absolutely. It's to use a nice modern buzzword, it's an embodied practice.
Right.
This is one of the things I love about all of these things that we're addressing is how throughout the history of Judaism, there hasn't been this notion of like, we are just floating heads traveling around the world, just thinking things, and all of our emotions are also thinking things, but there is a deep connection with our bodies, with our senses, and that our bodies are sacred vessels. Our bodies are a part of our divine image. They are not inherently dirty or sinful, but they are actually a part of what it means to be a part of God's creation. And yes, absolutely. So I wanted to share next. This is called a 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. I see Amy smiling. I feel like she knew the whole playbook before she came, but.
We did, but I'm enjoying our life.
And I think actually, and I didn't make this connection until Wendy and Audrey were presenting it, but this is a modern grounding technique, and y'all can feel free to correct me. I would translate that as techniques to help calm us down, to help calm our nervous system down. Like if we were thinking about grounding a wire, like an electrical wire, it's this idea of giving all of this pent-up energy within ourselves a place to be released. And there's this technique, and when I had only heard of it when I did this session when I was in Israel, but apparently it's a very well-known technique that I want to walk everyone through, and then I'll connect it with the Jewish side of things here in just a moment. So first, I want to invite you to put your packets down, feel yourself firmly grounded on the floor. We're not going to close our eyes for this one because it's going to use our eyes. And just for the next few moments, I want to invite you to notice 5 different things around the room. Could be the simplest thing in the world. And for each thing, take one breath and just notice it. Now, in our seats, I'm going to invite you to notice 4 different sensations of touch that you're experiencing. At this time, you may close your eyes. That helps me. Could be the feeling of your fingertips touching one another. It could be your hand on the chair. It could be the warmth of the seat, the coldness of the metal. Noticing these 4 things, we're now going to turn to our ears. And just notice 3 sounds. 3 sounds. Now, we're going to notice 2 elements of scent, 2 aromas. And then finally, for 1, a taste. Something that we can taste in our mouths. When you're ready, I want to invite you to reopen your eyes if you have closed them. And I think the connection that I did not fully appreciate is Havdalah as a ritual. For those who may not be familiar, this is the ritual we do at the end of Shabbat. And it is a true ritual of the senses. A good trick that I learned, if you're ever doing Havdalah at home, and you're wondering, okay, which of the 4 blessings goes first? I learned that it actually moves up on your face. So if you begin with your mouth, so the first one is our blessing over wine, taste. Then you move to your nose, you'll smell the spices, of course. To your eyes, the sight of the flame flickering. And then many people will hold their hands out and you look at the reflection of the flame on your fingernails. That's where that practice comes from. Perhaps an idea of all of us being diffractions or refractions of the divine light. So mouth, nose, eyes, and then the 4th one is the blessing for Havdalah as a whole. And just in that, and if you add singing to it, we've pretty much covered all of our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding techniques. So I wanted to present just a couple of different strategies as we are moving into the High Holy Days, as the world is what the world is today. And hopefully give you all some tools to help feel more centered, help feel more grounded, and find that internal place of stability, that internal ma'oz, that internal stronghold within us. Just as a closing note, for those who are interested in Jewish mindfulness, I wanted to highlight 2 different organizations. It's also found on your packet. One is the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. It's a really wonderful organization that does all kinds of different retreats. They do online programs, different things like that. And also Or Halev, the founder of which was the one who really brought me through a different version of this lesson. So many thanks to Rabbi Jacobson Mazels. And then a couple books I wanted to mention are Jewish Meditation by Aryeh Kaplan. This is really kind of the classic Jewish meditation book. And Everyday Holiness by Alan Marinus, which is Alan Marinus, the founder of the Musar Institute up in Toronto, I believe, in Canada. And his book, Everyday Holiness, is kind of a modern intro to Musar, which is worthy of its own little mini-series. Perhaps later on in 5786, we could explore some Musar. But Musar is very much grounded in the continual growth, development, of ourselves and different attributes of ourselves, things like patience and resilience and so on and so forth. And I think certainly a great tool as we are developing our own strategies and methods to just make it day by day in the world that we're living in. And I hope that in this upcoming holy season that you all have that opportunity to tap into that inner sanctuary within, and that we all have this chance to walk home, to find ourselves again, and to live the best versions of ourselves in the new year. So thank you all so much for joining us. And I hope many of you will be here next week, September 10th, where Rabbi Greenstein will be expanding. Instead of internal stability, personal stability, he's going to be talking about stability within a shifting global landscape. So over the course of our series, we're getting stability through all different types, lots of different refractions from the prism of what stability can mean. So thank you all so much. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening and an early Shana Tova. Adrian? Adrian's our.
I used to have, but I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Very interesting. I have neuropathy, and I tested it.